Hey guys, Jay here. Sorry for the delay in getting this video out to you. It was an early morning here in the UK to watch the Grand Prix. I then went back to bed and long story short, I overslept and then I had to do some stuff. So apologies, I'll get this video out as soon as I can. Got a lot to unpack, so let's get on with it. Starting off with the results from the Australian Grand Prix. So obviously if you haven't watched the Grand Prix yet, then don't look at this. But it was a very chaotic race. The top 10, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, George Russell, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, Alexander Albon, Lance Stroll, Nico Hulkenberg, Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Lewis Hamilton. They were the top 10, so obviously those assets scored points. And then Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon and Oliver Bearman finished the race, but unfortunately there was casualties in this race. Liam Lawson, Gabriel Bortoleto, Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Jack Doohan, Isaac Hadjar, all DNFing. Isaac Hadjar, he crashed on the formation lap, and which devastated him, and I personally felt very sorry for him. I imagine a lot of people did. But yeah, it was not a good time for the rookies, unless you was Kimi Antonelli. Running 3 teams this season, as I told you last week. I had a last minute change of plans just before qualifying. I woke up on Saturday morning very, very early and thought I would just have another look on F1 Fantasy Tools. And to my shock, all of a sudden, all the top teams were McLaren Williams builds. So I went back and forth in my head what I wanted to do. I scrambled. I moved my team 2 to team 1 to team 2, and I went with a McLaren Williams build in team 1, which you're going to see in a minute. And I adjusted my third team, starting with team 1. So what can we do? Go on to the calculator. So this is F1 Fantasy Tools, which you're probably aware of by now. At the moment, this is with the equal points per million, because the sim by writer still hasn't been done yet. Let's bear that in mind. So looking at this, we've got my team at the top here. And at the moment, it would mean using all my budget, but I would favour Team 1. So that's McLaren, Williams, Norris, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Doohan, Hadjar. At the moment, it's predicted to get 1.2 million in increase in budget, the same as Teams 3, 4 and 5, but with just slightly more points. But it's mainly because of Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg didn't have the best of qualifyings, but he finished P7. Now, part of that was because of pit strategies by other teams. For example, Ferrari cocking up their pit strategy. But again, he is looking at gaining 0.6 million, and he is a safe pair of hands. So I would be wagering on Hulkenberg. The only trouble with Team 1 is it does come with Jack Doohan again, who is expected to lose 0.6 in value, and again Hadjar, who's also expected to lose 0.6 in value. But again, remember, this is before simulation. The other option I could go with is to bring in the Ferrari, which would mean Team 2 or Team 4. Now, Team 2 and 4 have Albon as the DRS boost driver, the ×2, which, okay, he's going to gain 0.6, but we'd lose Norris, and Norris is also expected to gain, and we don't want to not be able to afford Norris down the line. The other thing with Team 2 and Team 4 is Tsunoda versus Stroll, on who you gamble on between the two. But at the moment, I think my mind's on Team 1. Let's put that into practice. Okay, so that's how the team looks in practice, in theory. Now, my issue with this is Doohan and Hadjar. I don't want to write Hadjar off yet, because he did so well in practice and qualifying. And I just think, it was all the rookies' first time in the wet. The only problem was he was very hard on himself, like I already said. So it's going to be whether his confidence takes a huge knock. Doohan, I'm not fully comfortable with, so gamble on Bortoleto and keep 1.4 million in the bank, which I wouldn't mind doing. Yeah, it's going to be out of Doohan and Bortoleto. I would probably be minded to go with this team more at the moment. The other problem I've got, of course, is with my constructors, it would still mean I don't have two top constructors. I mean, aside from Bortoleto's DNF, I do think the Saubers, if they keep it on, along with the HAASes, they'll move up the field. In fact, I can't even afford Bearman. Oh no, I can. I can afford Bearman, or I could do that. That might be more sensible, just because Bearman did keep it on track throughout the race. I think at the moment, yeah, it's going to be either this or this. Okay, so let's look at Team 2. So Team 2 originally was going to be my Team 1, and it actually looked like this. But due to Bearman's DNFs in practice and I think it was a gear problem in qualifying, at the last minute, I changed it to Doohan and then swapped into Team 2. Now, this team scored me the least amount of points, but I do have two top constructors. So if we go back to Fantasy Tools, got my team up here. And expected price changes, another loss in budget. So I would probably go for something like possibly this one, Team 4. So Team 4 is Mercedes, Ferrari, Piastri, Ocon, Hülkenberg, Hadjar, Bortoleto. So Hülkenberg and Bortoleto. Okay, so that's all right. So for Team 2, that's how it would look if I was to go for that. I don't mind that, but again, if I wanted to, could I go for Bearman? No, I can't go for Bearman on this occasion. But I wouldn't write this team off either, because at least this way I've got two top constructors. Especially Ferrari, because I think Ferrari will do better in the dry. At least I hope they will. So it would be down to Hadjar and Bortoleto, using their experience from this race to calm down a bit, keep it on track. Hülkenberg is reliable, as we know, and Ocon has already started that value increase that we expected for this season. Only 0.2, but still. But yeah, I would say probably that for Team 2 is a safe option. Okay, so Team 3, Rookie of the Year. Now, this scored the most amount of points, but I think it lost the most amount in budget. So the good news with this team is we've got Lando Norris and McLaren, so all we need is Piastri and the top tier constructor. It was an unusual mistake by Alonso. Again, I'd say the weak link is Doohan and maybe the Alpines. So let's see what we got here. We could go for another McLaren Williams build with Norris, Alonso, Doohan, Hadjar, Bortoleto for points, but that's going to be more of a loss. It looks like I had this one highlighted, Team 4. That's right. So yeah, so Team 4, it's only 1 point less than Team 1, but there's no value growth, but there's no value loss. The only downside is it comes with Alexander Albon as our DRS boost, as our 2x driver. Expected to gain 0.6 million, but it does mean we'll have two top constructors, but not a top driver. Okay, I'm not fully against it, because at least we've got the two top constructors. McLaren scored 71 points. And Ferrari got 36 points. Just minus 3 points for positions lost because of that bad strategy with the pits. I'm not against this team. It's just we don't have a top a top driver asset. What can we do if we remove Doohan? 6.8. We could go Bearman. We could do this. We could go Bearman for China. Actually, what we could do is we could go for Bearman, and then if he gains, we could bank some money and then drop to Bortoletto. We could go that route. So let's talk about chips, specifically the Limitless chip and the Wildcard chip. Would I use Limitless in China? My honest and personal opinion right now is no, I would not. Only because a lot of people got hit hard by all the DNFs in Australia. And again, it was a wet race. So you have to expect that there's going to be chaos a lot of the time. That said, if, and this is only if, you have managed to gain a good chunk in budget because for whatever reason you selected the best team, then fine, consider it. But I would say for most of us, me personally, I think I'm going to hold on to Limitless until another sprint weekend. The next sprint weekend is Miami, so it's not that far away. And there are 6 sprint weekends throughout the season. So, you know, it's a long season. The wild card, I'm on the fence. I personally don't see me using the wild card. But if you are very unsure of your team, if you think you can put a much better team together, but you have to use the wild card to do it, unless you're willing to take a 10 points penalty for each extra transfer, then that's down to you. Sorry, that came out a little bit wrong. That's your decision. You're going to have to make that decision based on your gut feeling. My gut feeling right now, I don't know if I'm going to want that wild card a little later in the season. In terms of the other chips, the final fix, the autopilot, no negative, extra DRS, no comments really at this stage. The only thing I would say is Lando Norris is by far the fastest car at the moment. Well, the McLarens, I should say, because Piastri was within a second of Norris a lot of the time during the race. The McLarens are definitely the fastest car. With the extra DRS, I would wait until you've got both the McLaren drivers in your team if you're able to. And that way you can apply your 2 times boost to one of the drivers and then your DRS to the other driver. That being said, if you have Norris in your team now, extra DRS could be tempting for China. I've got some thoughts that I wrote on my phone after and during the Grand Prix. So apologies if you see me looking down at my phone. I'll type them up for the video, but just for the sake of recording, you might see me looking down. So first of all, 2 top tier constructors are still going to be fundamental for your points. We've already hit on this. We've already said that the biggest scorers were McLaren and Mercedes. McLaren on 71 points, Mercedes on 67 points. Right now, I think the constructors to have long term are McLaren and Ferrari. Until then, it does look like Williams could be a good gamble, but Mercedes a safer bet. If you're going for budget building with the constructors, at the moment, the only ones I would touch would be HAAS and possibly kick Sauber at a long shot. That being said, really, you want to prioritise your constructors for points, not budget building. In terms of drivers, let's talk about Kimi Antonelli. He qualified in 16th and he finished in 4th. Originally 5th, but it was overturned and he was promoted back to 4th. Not only did this kid get 8 overtakes, he kept it on track in the wet on his debut race and he's gained 0.6 million. I am definitely interested in getting Anthony into my team somehow. I think out of all the drivers right now in terms of points, he is one to keep an eye on, because if he was to continue qualifying low and then finishing high, that is good for your F1 fantasy team. I'm not saying he's a tier 8 asset, or he's not anyway at the moment because he's only 19 million. But I am saying he is that good middle ground between A and B for scoring points and just increasing your budget a little bit. Williams were a lot stronger than I anticipated. The concern I have with Williams is qualifying high, finishing low. Doesn't look like they'll finish as low as I thought, but it is something to bear in mind. When Albon qualified in 6th, I was worried. I was expecting him to qualify around 11, 12, 10th at a push. But when he qualified 6th, I was thinking he was going to drop down to like 9th, 10th, and that's not good for F1 fantasy. With Williams, I think they're going to have good days, definitely, but there are going to be some bad days, as every team has. A lot of people were choosing Carlos Sainz in their teams, and I understand why, because Carlos Sainz is a great driver. But the fact that Albon out-qualified him and beat him in the race because of Sainz's DNF, I think it's going to be a very delicate balancing game with Williams. But if you can pull it off, it's going to be worth it. I would say yes to Williams at this point, but only until you can get in another top tier constructor, i.e. Ferrari or Mercedes. I'm not sold on Red Bull just yet, despite them having Max Verstappen. And finally, I just want to talk about the DNF situation with the rookies. It's one race and it was a wet race. If we take the race aside and just focus on free practice and qualifying, the only concern was Oliver Bearman when he crashed in free practice 1, spun in free practice 3, and then he had a gearbox issue, I think it was, in qualifying, so he wasn't able to set a time and had to start from the pit lane. That said, he did finish the race in the wet, whereas a lot of the others didn't. I would not rule out the rookies after Australia. I think we need to see what they can do in the dry, and then we can make our assumptions and decisions based on that. Talking of China, next weekend, this is UK time. Practice 1 is going to be at 3:30 AM in the morning on Friday, but also sprint qualifying is at 7:30 on Friday morning, and we don't have to lock in our teams until after sprint qualifying. So my advice, do not lock your team in until after sprint qualifying. That being said, you must lock in your team before the sprint race, which is at 3 AM on Saturday morning. So set your alarms early Saturday and make sure you're happy with your team before 3 o'clock. Later Saturday morning, still early, 7 AM, we have qualifying. And then Sunday, it's another early morning, but not as early. 7 AM is the race for us here in the UK. Weather-wise, it should be dry. So that's good. We'll hopefully get a bit more of a accurate reading on our teams and on the assets, the drivers and constructors. Temperature-wise, it looks pretty decent. Maybe slightly cool, but we should have a dry race on Sunday. In terms of last year's top 5 for the Chinese Grand Prix, it was Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc, Carlos Sainz. Norris and Verstappen will definitely be up there. And if Ferrari can get it right, I expect Leclerc to be up there as well. Sainz, possibly. So, let's look at the global top 5. The current leader is Red Tiger Racing. They used their extra DRS boost. They went with a Mercedes Aston Martin build with Lando Norris as a 3 times, with Antonelli as a 2 times. That's very clever, actually. That was a good call. Hulkenberg, Bearman and Stroll in the team as well. No negative points. 347, a good amount of points there. And to be fair, some good budget building as well because of Antonelli, Hulkenberg and Stroll. So that's We got catching up to do. We got catching up to do. And finally, guys, if you're playing with me in GridRivals this year, unfortunately, because of the last-minute scramble sorting out my F1 fantasy team, I forgot to update my GridRivals teams, and I've been hit pretty hard on both of them. So in the GridRivals League, I have lost team value. I only gained with Bearman and Bortoletto. I lost 2 million with Sainz, who was my turbo boost driver, as we know it in F1 Fantasy. I even lost 1.9 million with Leclerc, so devastated about that. And unfortunately, they're all locked in. They're all locked in for China until after China. Then I lose Sainz. Sainz's contract is over. I'm not willing to pay any release fees because I've already lost too much money. So I'm really relying on Bearman and Bortoletto again. And I'm relying on Sainz to do well and claim back some of that value. In my own league, a little different. I still lost, but just not quite as much. Oscar Piastri, unfortunately, I did lose 800,000. Again, I lost with Sainz as my turbo. I lost with Ferrari 700,000, but the damage in the bank wasn't as harsh, but it has left me with work to do. Again, all my drivers are locked in for China, and then after China, I lose Ocon, so I'll be looking probably further down the field. Gasly, to my surprise, hasn't lost or gained, and the other thing that really surprised me is I looked at the top team in what I believe is the global, and Lando Norris also lost in value, yet he had a near perfect race. So still learning about GridRivals. It's not a great start to the season. So there you are, guys. I know this has probably been a long-winded video. It's going to take me a little while to cut this down and edit it. I'll get it out as soon as I can. Remember to set your alarms for China. Best of luck. Have a good time next week. Don't get disheartened if things haven't gone to plan this weekend. It's only round one. There's 23 rounds to go plus the sprints. It's a long season. Anything could happen. Keep going and believe. Alright, guys. Thanks for watching. All the best.